Building industry in Kazakhstan is popular, profitable, and prospective. Despite the impact of the global financial crisis, this sector of the economy remains in the same positions, and in some cities, such as Astana and Almaty, even the leading position. The capital of Kazakhstan is undergoing a real building boom, and it is clear indication that the manifestations of economy instability are not so clear yet. Construction sites work almost around the clock in Astana, providing the necessary volume of housing in the country. Let's see what business publications in Kazakhstan had to write about it, which pay more attention to the topic of construction in recent years. The newspaper Capital KZ gives interesting facts. Some 300,000 people are waiting in line for their apartments in the local administrations, including 425,000 people in Zhelstroy Sberbank. Kazakh citizens are ready to invest more than $6 billion in housing. Here's how the famous owner of the construction business in Kazakhstan, Alexander Belovich, explained that number. I divide 425,000 people by 2. Let's take 200,000 people. Each of them wants to buy an apartment. Let's take an apartment of 600 square meters. The buyer needs to save a half of the cost of the apartment and borrow the other half from the bank. Let's do the math. An apartment costs $1,000 per square meter. The buyer needs to save $30,000. Multiply that by 2,000 people. We get $6 billion. And that's only our potential buyers who are going to save the money for a certain period of time. This is a large amount for potential investors. They need only help with the cheap mortgage we're talking about. At the same time, according to the information of the head of the committee, 0.4 square meters of housing is constructed for one person. According to the expert opinion, this is not enough. What is being built today is difficult to access for the majority of the population. According to Belovich, the program of rental housing and the program Affordable Housing 2020 can solve the situation in the country. I mentioned those waiting in line at Zhelstroy Sberbank. Also, there is a great amount of internal investors who are not waiting in line anywhere. Here's how I see it ideally. First, in order to provide the population with housing, it is necessary to provide with affordable mortgages. And the rent we're talking about is a good tool for housing in Kazakhstan. It is necessary to implement a commercial lease. Here we will ask the state to provide interest subsidy on loans. In this case, the rent will interest many of our developers. Builders discuss how to build up a relationship with the state, was one of the headlines in Forbes Kazakhstan. According to the experts, today's construction industry is on the verge of serious challenges and changes. All market participants need to open constructive dialogue to establish united and flexible rules of the game, which meet the new trends. Here's how the chairman of the National Chamber of Entrepreneurs, Ablay Marzikhmetov, commented on the issue. Construction is not only building, but the building industry in general, and that's something we need to discuss. The industry is developing quite rapidly under the new level of funding and the volume of construction. However, there are issues that need to be solved, such as cooperation, attracting investments into the sector, and training personnel. Deputy Chairman, member of the Board of the National Chamber of Entrepreneurs of Kazakhstan, Rakhim Ashakbayev, focused on the fact that the construction industry is very important on the Republican scale and within the customs union. The share of industry's GDP in the countries of the customs union, which currently exceeds $2.4 trillion, is a little above 6%. This industry gives a very big employment range. However, we do not feel enough attention from the supervising state bodies. Information agency Kazakhstan News continued the building and construction topic. The web portal reported that Kazakhstan is ready to transition to European building standards in 2015, spending for this purpose about 4 billion Kazakh tenge. The journalist referred to the data of the deputy chairman of the National Chamber of Entrepreneurs, Rakhim Ashakbayev. European standards are the European construction standards that the EU Commission has been developing since the mid-70s. The EU countries have been working according to these standards over the last 2 decades. Over 10 construction standards for geotechnics, supporting structures of reinforced concrete, steel, aluminum, and wood, as well as the design of earthquake-resistant building structures have been developed and approved. Speaking at the 27th Council of Investors, the head of state Nursultan Nazarbayev instructed to ensure the transition of the construction industry in Kazakhstan to the Eurocode system, most of the functions on the expertise in the field of construction in the competitive environment in 2015. According to our data, Kazakhstan has already spent about 4 billion Kazakh tenge for localization of euro codes, and according to the former Minister of Regional Development Bolat Shamishev, Kazakhstan is ready to switch to the euro code system from January 1st, 2015. Oshakbayev added that it is a fundamental question for Kazakhstan. We are all in favor of safe facilities and introduction of advanced standards in construction. If these standards are adopted, as our colleagues suggested, they shall be governed by the Eurasian Economic Commission, and we are convinced that the quality and transparency of these standards is considerably inferior to what we have achieved at the national level. Our position is, we want to do the same, but with our own regulators, and so these would be approved at the level of government or at the Ministry of National Economy. Let's read some other interesting news. A subsidiary of the national company Kazakhstan Timir Joly, Camcor, and the French partner company Alstom opened a local production at the joint venture Kaz Elektroprivat with a capacity of 1,500 switch machines a year in Almaty, Kazakhstan Timir Joly press service reported. Total investment in the joint venture, which is owned by partners on an equal basis and which specializes in the production of railway automation for Timir Joly, is approximately 8 million euros. In 2013, CEP has received a contract worth 90 million euros for the supply of 10,000 switchgear for 10 years from Timir Joly, read the statement. The subscription period for the shares of Kazakhstan electricity grid operating company KGOK in the framework of the national IPO was extended by the decision of Kazakhstan Stock Exchange, KC. The company's press service reported to the business portal capital.kz. The number of people wishing to become shareholders of national companies has increased dramatically during the subscription for the shares of KGOK in the framework of the national IPO in the last days of action. Due to the sharp influx of applications and documents, the brokers needed more time to process them, explained the statement from the press service. As reported earlier, a placement of 10% minus 1 ordinary shares of KGOK is the Kazakhstan stock market, accounting for 25,999,999 common shares at a price of 505 tenge per each. Kazakh and Dutch businessmen discussed the prospects of partnership. According to Forbes Kazakhstan, the roundtable Kazakhstan and the Netherlands, Perspectives of Business Partnership, was held in Almaty with the participation of Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Kazakhstan Hans Trisser, Honorary Professor of Almaty Management University, Senator of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the former President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, René van der Linden, as well as the Kazakh and Dutch entrepreneurs. The creation of the Kazakh-Dutch Business Council was announced during the meeting. The first meeting was held recently in Astana. In the special opinion section, let's turn to some excerpts from the article of a financier Murat Temirkhanov, who appeared in Forbes Kazakhstan. The author reflects on where the cabinet of ministers will lead Kazakhstan on the way to the top 30 developed countries. Kazakhstan has a great goal set by the head of state to enter the top 30 developed countries. It only remains to consolidate, to plan actions and move forward. The task is repeatedly facilitated by the fact that the country is extremely rich in natural resources, and income from this wealth can accelerate progress. The financier writes and continues, the head of state clearly outlined goals and visions for the future of our country in his letters and policy documents. There are no questions, but they occur when the government begins to transform goals into concrete indicators. The stability of our economy also depends entirely on raw materials. For example, now we are going through hard times, and we immediately climbed into a jug of oil, national fund, in order to maintain sustainable growth. But what would we have done if we had no oil? He continued. Now the authorities have another goal set by the president, the new economic policy. In itself it is good, but now will the government act? Given past experience, as well as the tendency of officials to campaigning, we can assume that the cabinet of ministers and other executive bodies will begin to build the infrastructure and other components of the new economic policy NEP and completely forget about everything else. It is necessary to ensure that every tenge spent on development will give the maximum recoil. The author concludes that the huge public investments go directly from the national fund and state institutions. The lack of public control over such investment leads to high inefficiency and direct waste of state budget.